The RPG Cave's mana is fueled by patrons at patreon.com/YumiCapri, and we want to say thank you to everyone for all of their support, including our Capremium producers, Dallas Ford, Drew Agnew from the House of Mario podcast, Jace Baldridge from twitch.tv/Baka Ridge, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team, and Jonathan Brown over at youtube.com/GamingPurpleMonkey. Our platinum producers, Brian Scott, Robbie Miller, and Trucker Sloth. Our gold members, Argo, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Emily O'Kelly, Heather Boney, James Johnson, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Benji Kong, Marcus O'Neill, RJ Kern, Dano, Skinny Matt, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you all for all of your support. Now, on with the show. Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to the 5th episode of the RPG Cave. I am one of your hosts, the level 99 human archmage, Ryan Turford. I'm joined, as always, by the level 99 elf ranger, Mr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. We have a lot to cover with E3. RPGs was fruitful in this year's E3, so I can't wait to talk about it.
One or two RPG announcements, Garret. It's not much, of course. Just,
Oh, of course.
Lots.
That covers the year. Yeah, basically.
That's true. Actually, there was lots of stuff. I'm just kind of kidding here. But before we get into there, of course, let's clear the dungeon of those pesky mobs. So, of course, if you like what we do and you want to support the show, of course, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. Again, the YouTube channel link is in the show notes. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers, and then we could be youtube.com/theRPGCave. So any help you can give there would be awesome. Again, you don't have to pay or anything like that. It's just, simple subscribe to the channel there. Or if you would like early access to this, as well as all of our shows, as well as exclusive content, patreon.com/YumiCapri is where you can do that. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content. It's like a vending machine, but for content. It's pretty cool. And nice. Last thing, before we kind of get into the show proper, our scheduling for the show is going to be a little weird over the next 2 weeks. Right. So obviously, it's Sunday today, the day we're recording this, and you might be listening to it on Sunday because we're basically throwing out the episode today, right as soon as we record it. Next week, next weekend, there will not be a show. Garret and I will actually be recording at our normal time next week, but we always record a week ahead of time. So by the time the episode will come out, it'll be essentially the next weekend. So 2 Saturdays from now. But the other reason I wanted to flag that as well, it'll be our very first episode that will be all about a specific game or series. And it's Chrono Trigger on the next episode. So, Garret, we're finally going to be able to talk about Chrono Trigger. I'm very excited. And people had asked us to basically, make sure to tell people kind of what games and series we're going to talk about on future episodes. So, Chrono Trigger is the next episode. Then the episode after that, we're going to be talking about the Persona series. And then the week after that, we're going to be talking about the Witcher series. So those are the 3 kind of like series-based or game-based episodes that we've got coming up. So look forward to that in 2 weeks' time. But Garret, it's time to read from the sacred texts because, oh man, normally we don't do news on the show. We in fact, we're kind of breaking our own rules by doing this episode, Garret, because we talked about it when we first talked about the RPG Cave. We don't want to talk about news on this show. We don't want it to be current. But it's E3. We kind of had to do it because, we love E3.
We got to go
E3
through it, man.
Was great. Yeah. So we're going to kind of go through and talk about kind of all the different announcements and other things that happened at E3 that pertain to RPGs only. So we're not going to be able to talk about every story that came up, like some of the stuff that was in like the Guerrilla Collective or some of the smaller stuff. We definitely probably don't have time to get to on this episode, but we're going to hit on most of the major stuff that came out of E3, which I think is important. So let's start off with Bethesda. Of course, Bethesda was part of the Microsoft Showcase, and the very first thing that they showed was Starfield, the next game from Bethesda Game Studios, which is, of course, their first IP in 25 years because it's been a long time since the very first Elder Scrolls game, which is hilarious to think about because it's been longer since Bethesda Game Studios had a new IP than the Xbox has actually existed. Which is just, it's just funny because it's turning 20 this year. The game is coming to Xbox and PC on November 11th, 2022. We got a very small kind of teaser trailer that was in engine, according to the developers there. What did you think about Starfield's trailer, Garrett?
I still don't know what to make of this game, to be honest with you. I know of just looking into impressions of Starfield and looking more into interviews. It is think of Skyrim in space. Think of a handcrafted world of basically like Skyrim where you have a bunch of quests, a bunch of environmental things to do. But again, just looking at it from the trailer, it seems like it's an outer space game. It seems a little bit more grounded than Mass Effect. It seems a little bit more close to home, a little bit more thought out, I think, with what's going on here on Earth. So I'm very excited to see more. I'm glad they dated it so late and they just didn't show any gameplay. It's like, okay, yeah, you got way more than enough time. You got a year and a half, possibly going to delay it once or twice out there. I can understand why you don't have gameplay right now. Just give us, kind of a Steven Spielberg, poster type of thing and we're good to go.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's a year and a half away. It's very far away. And again, this has echoes of Skyrim written all over it because again, Skyrim was famously announced for 11/11/11, and that was a year and a bit before it had come out. So, so it's actually a very similar scenario here where they just wanted to get it out of the way. The release date's super far away, and obviously they're probably pretty comfortable hitting that because it's, far into the future, and it's probably farther along than we're anticipating. So it's awesome to see Starfield get announced, and it was good that they kind of got the exclusivity kind of elephant in the room kind of out of the way. Yeah, they basically just said, look, it's coming to Xbox and PC, and that's it, and just kind of called it a day. And yeah, just like you said, some of the developer interviews afterwards were like, yeah, it's just Skyrim in space. So I'm down for Skyrim in space. So.
You sold me on that. I would still like to see gameplay a little bit more, see what the new engine looks like. They kind of reiterated upon that. But yeah, I'm very excited to see more of this game later on. Yeah. I'll be patient.
Same. I'm excited for it, but I'm glad we at least know that it's not anytime soon, because if they were just kind of ambiguous with a 2022 date, people would have thought oh yeah, it'll just come in January and then be disappointed when it's not there. So yeah, I'm glad that they set the record straight with this one. Well, next up, this one from Square Enix was something. Square Enix have announced that Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is coming from Eidos Montreal and is coming to all platforms on October 26th. And you might be saying to yourself, but Ryan, it kind of looks like an action game. Is it this really an RPG? And yeah, they call it an action RPG. You're leveling up all your characters. You're gaining skills for them, all your characters. It's very much an action RPG in the same way that something like Avengers was, but without the live service elements. So
I see.
Yeah. So this trailer didn't really do much for me. Right. Or I should say the trailer itself looked great, but then when they went into the gameplay and they were fighting Jello cubes, I don't know.
That was a little rough.
Yeah,
that was a little rough.
Well, it's also just it felt kind of boring, and maybe that's just the first planet you're on, and maybe as you go to other planets and stuff like that, maybe the game opens up a little bit. What'd you think about this, Garrett?
It just seemed a little bit surface level for now. I know it's probably going more in depth, but from my understanding, you just control Star-Lord, and the rest of the people kind of help you around to make beautiful fighting combos. It doesn't seem like you control other people in your Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, it actually sounds a lot like Scarlet Nexus, where the other party members are there helping you out, and then you essentially use the other party members as skills for Peter.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I definitely won't get this day one. I'm not a huge Marvel fan myself. I never got into Avengers. I'll watch the movies or whatever, but I think this is a wait and see. Let's see what reviews say when they go through the whole game. Let's see how the sales look. It might be a $20 pickup. It might be a Game Pass pickup for me if it ever comes out over there. But yeah, I'm not overly excited with this game. Yeah. It seems just kind of bleh, it's there. Here's an RPG.
It exists.
It's coming out.
It's fine.
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. Whereas like, yeah, I'm probably going to wait for reviews on this one again. I liked Avengers. I really liked the campaign, but it was all the live service elements that kind of like killed any excitement of the game for me. So knowing it plays like Avengers, but without the live service elements gets me a little more excited for it. But again, the stuff we saw from maybe the first area that they went to in the gameplay trailer just kind of killed any excitement I had for it. So I'm hoping it's good. I'm hoping it's awesome. I know a lot of people love Guardians of the Galaxy. Again, I'm like you, Garrett, where I don't really like superheroes, but I do like some superhero games. But it takes a lot for me to kind of get into a superhero game. So I hope this one can win me over. Well, next up, speaking of games that have really won people over, Garrett, Elden Ring is a real game. It exists. It was officially re-revealed during the Summer Games Fest, and it came along with a release date, January 21st, 2020. That is exactly a week before Pokemon Arceus comes out, Pokemon Legends, which is going to be an interesting dynamic, kind of having those kind of launch within a week ahead, between each other.
Yeah.
I'm not really into Soulsborne games at all. Especially just the slower ones like Dark Souls or Bloodborne. They feel just a little too clunky for me. But even though I like difficult games, like I like games like Ninja Gaiden or Devil May Cry, like I think those games are really hard, but they're also really fun because of how fast they move. So I'm hoping that Elden Ring is more in that direction, but we don't really know. What did you think about this trailer for Elden Ring that had the internet ablaze, Garrett? People were excited for this one.
I know a lot of people are excited about Elden Ring, and I know people are head over heels with the Soulsborne games. I'm with you, Ryan. I'm not a Soulsborne player whatsoever. I wish I got into them. Like, I would love to play Bloodborne at one point and just get a click in my head, because I know people have so much fun with it. This trailer, to me, looks like Dark Souls to me. Like, I don't know. It doesn't move me much at all compared to what other people are thinking. Now, I would love to see more gameplay. I would love to see what the open world looks like and the exploration and what that looks like. But when I just looked at the trailer itself, it doesn't have me sold, because it looks like Dark Souls to me. And there's like not much difference with the atmosphere or whatever. So that's what clicks in my head right now. I'm very surprised it came out in Summerfest. That totally took me by surprise. And it took me by surprise. Actually, it has a release date with it. So I'm very happy for people who are going to be really into this game. But I think I just need a little bit more, like a demo, some sort of gameplay to really fully evaluate my excitement level for this game.
Yeah. I'm kind of in wait and see mode as well, for similar reasons, or the reasons I just talked about too, where it's like, if it's a faster moving game than something like Bloodborne, I'm probably going to be all in on this game, because I love kind of the mood and the atmosphere of that they kind of showed off in the trailer. Like, the world looks really cool. Some of the enemies look incredible. The enemy designs, like especially some of the bosses they showed off, like that fight with the dragon while you're on horseback, like, dude, that looks so cool. But man, if it's a slow and clunky action game, like action RPG like Dark Souls is, then I know it's not for me.
It's gonna be rough.
So yeah,
I see.
I'm interested to learn more, and I'm hoping that it's more up my alley than some other games, but we'll wait and see on that one. Well, next up, speaking of games that we might want to wait and see on, Square Enix had another announcement. They announced a new Final Fantasy game called Stranger in Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, which is being developed by Team Ninja, basically the same team that did Neo, and Neo 2 is working on this one. It'll launch sometime in 2022 on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. There's also a PlayStation 5 trial version of the game right now if you want to go try it out. I know it was corrupted for people kind of on the first day that the trial came out, but it is working now because I have played it.
It is.
This game is a weird one. I mean, you star as a character who wears like a t-shirt and pants. But
Devil May Cry, let's go.
Yeah, but they didn't really talk about too much in interviews afterwards, but I have a theory that it's an isekai. So something like Konosuba or ReZero, where essentially like you're a character in the real world, like our world, that's essentially been like either he died and got resurrected in the Final Fantasy world, or he just got transported there like by walking through a weird door or something like that. So I suspect that's what's going on with this one. Nomura, who is one of the people, like the main people working on this game, he said in interviews that this isn't it takes place in the same world as Final Fantasy 1, and it's supposed to kind of be like a remixed version of the very first Final Fantasy game that came out on NES, which I thought was interesting, especially because like they fight Garland, who is like kind of the first boss and kind of also the final boss in the original Final Fantasy. They go to like the Chaos Temple, which is again the first like dungeon you go to in Final Fantasy 1. So I thought when watching the trailer that, you know, it was had something to do with the original Final Fantasy. But Garrett, they say chaos an awful lot in the trailer for this.
Too much, man. Oh my goodness.
It's something. What did you think about this one?
I think it was more, again, I always go back to gameplay and like, even let's just get rid of the chaos aside or whatever. It seems like a Neo-ish game, like just playing it. And it just reminds me like, oh, I think I should rather play Neo instead of this game. Yeah. Because it seems like Neo is like a little bit more well developed and it plays really tightly. Whereas this one, it was just kind of rough for me. I went through it like maybe 30 minutes or something like that. And I just knew it was like, I think this game is not for me. I keep dying and like, I don't know how to move physically with these weird button controls on this controller. Yeah. Like that's just me. And I'm like, I rather dive back into like Neo. I heard Neo 2 is like pretty awesome.
Yeah. That's a really good game for those.
Yeah. I would rather play that type of game with that style versus whatever this is going to be. This Playboy, Devil May Cry, Chaos, Final Fantasy remix game.
We destroy Chaos.
Oh no.
It's a game. Yeah, I mean, I again liked what I thought. I thought it was okay. The demo was fine.
Yeah.
Again, like the graphics are not great. It has.
It really
like
isn't.
Bit of visual flair, but it looks very muddy. But who knows? I mean, the part of me that is nostalgic for all the Final Fantasy 1 stuff has me intrigued at least a little bit because that's a game I'm very nostalgic for. It's actually, we talked about it on the very first episode, but it's actually like secretly the very first RPG I ever played, even though I didn't know it was an RPG at the time. So I have a lot of love for the first Final Fantasy. So it's cool that they're revisiting that world, but yeah, I'm hoping it turns out to be good and not like a 5 or 6 on IGN. All right. Next up, this one got me very excited that they showed off during the Xbox press conference. Diablo 2 Resurrected has a release date. It will launch on all platforms on September 23rd. That trailer looked awesome for really Diablo 2. I loved the original game, and I'm so happy it's finally coming to consoles. First of all, and it looks like they actually have like a control scheme that kind of works for this one, because this one's even more kind of involved with the keyboard and mouse than the Diablo 3 was. So what do you think about this one, Garrett? Are you excited for Diablo 2? It looked like you
I'm very excited for Diablo 2. I adore Diablo 3 and just playing endlessly through those dungeons and that gameplay, that loot grind gameplay. And I hear Diablo 2 is like the darling. It's like one of the best Diablo games. And I was like, yes, thank you for making a remake. Thank you for making it not $60. It's $40, I think, right?
It is, yeah.
For the game. Sweet. So it's totally like a day one, if not like within the fall time frame. Like I will get this, and I would love to play with others and see how Diablo 2 goes. I'm definitely into it. Yeah.
The awesome thing too is it's got 8-player co-op, which is just
that's insane.
Be really fun, because like 4-player co-op was really fun in Diablo 3, but like we'd always have more people that want to play with us than 4 of us. So it would kind of suck kind of rotating people out. So now it's 8-player co-op. Like it's going to be
that screen's going to be chaos.
Yeah. Speaking of chaos. Oh yeah. I'm stoked for Diablo 2. Again, it's I played the original release back when it came out, because again, I've kind of been a fan of Diablo since Diablo 1 launched on the PC back in the day. Famously, that was my very first CD-ROM game I ever owned for my Pentium 1 computer, Garrett, back in the day. So I was super excited when Diablo 2 came out and loved it to death. So I'm so happy that people are finally going to get a chance to try this one out that have missed it back in the day on PC. And it looks like they redid like all the cutscenes too, because they showed some of them in the trailer, and they look really good too. So yeah, I'm stoked for this one. All right, next up, you called this one. We're going to get to our predictions a little bit later in the show, Garrett, but Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope got announced at the Ubisoft press conference. It is coming to Switch sometime in 2022. We know that it's basically based off Mario Galaxy rather than the main Mario universe. You've got Rosalina Rabbid in there, and she's adorable. And you're basically going to different planets and doing stuff. What did you think about this one, Garrett?
Oh, I'm all for this, man. I really love the trailer of it. It's cool that they're taking a galaxy approach to this, a nice angle with the Mario universe. The Star Rabbit freaks me out. It's like the stuff of nightmares. I love how quirky it still is with the rabbits. We saw a little bit of gameplay, but not too much, so we don't know how much they're going to expand upon it, but it's going to be a while before it comes over. So again, wait and see, be patient. It'll come out early next year, but I can't wait to play this on my Switch.
Yeah, same here. I love the first one, and I'm so excited to see this one. And again, I love Mario Galaxy. It's probably my favorite, 3D Mario game. So to have them kind of evoke kind of all the nostalgia from Mario Galaxy in a Mario Rabbids game, I think that's a slam dunk. And maybe if they continue to do the series beyond this point, I'd love to see them maybe do more of this where it's themed after a specific Mario game. Like if they did a Mario World version of Mario Rabbids.
Oh, that would be so cool.
That would be really cool with the weird looking Goombas and stuff like that. Or even a Mario 3 version. I think that would be pretty cool. So yeah, I'm stoked for this one. And again, 2022, we thought it might be this year if it get announced, but it's coming out next year. Isn't too bad either. All right.
Yeah, I was hoping this year, but I think it could be, and we were speculating on Shaq, a Switch Pro type of put out title right there. Okay, let's take the Switch Pro out, and this is the game that you will play it with.
Ubisoft does like to put games out at launch for new systems, so I think this might be the game for the Switch Pro. But again, we'll see. I mean, I just hope the Switch Pro is even a real thing, because Kazuo Kato keeps trying to convince me that it's not real, Garrett. And I don't know if I should believe
it's real. We all know it's real, even though it's not. Nintendo hasn't recognized it. We know.
I can't wait for people to start taking pictures of it on the production line in the next
me
2
too.
months. It's going to be wild. All right. Next up, speaking of our predictions, Garrett, Shin Megami Tensei 5 got a release date, and you'll never guess when it's coming out. November 12th. Is when it's coming out here in North America. Now, I had been a little worried about my prediction, Garrett, because I had actually predicted the release date for this, and when it leaked ahead of time, it got leaked for November 11th, which is the day before.
Yes.
But that's the Japanese release date of Shin Megami Tensei 5. But it's coming out here in North America on November 12th, which is something I figured would happen because the kind of like Tales of Arise were the release date's one day before earlier in Japan than it is in North America for some reason. I don't know why they're doing that, but that's what they're doing with this one too. But man, that trailer for Shin Megami Tensei 5 looked really impressive at the Nintendo Direct with the gameplay. That game looks awesome. What did you think about that's though, Garrett?
It looks stunning on the Switch. I can't believe the animations, the character art in there. I think they're doing Unreal Engine 4 for this one.
They are, yeah.
It looks just super good. You could definitely see some Tokyo Mirage Sessions UI flavor in there. I honestly, it's a Shin Megami Tensei game, and it looks a step up, a huge step up from the 3DS games. So I cannot wait to get my hands on it. Yeah,
I mean, it's been a long time since we've had a home release of a Shin Megami Tensei game, because again, the last one was Shin Megami Tensei 3 on PlayStation 2. So, I mean, besides the re-release, of course, that came out. So, yeah, I'm stoked for this game. It looks awesome. I am so ready to just die over and over again in this game.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be hard. It's going to be a very hard game. It's a Shin Megami Tensei game. We're expecting it to be difficult and kick our butts. But, man, I am psyched after seeing the trailer. It looked really good.
Well, it's few days before Pokemon, so if you get Pokemon and Shin Megami Tensei, right, you play a lot of SMT5 until you get very, bogged down, and then you go over to Pokemon and make yourself feel better.
Yeah, it balances itself out, I guess. It's
exactly.
Unless for some reason they crank up the difficulty on Pokemon, Garrett, and make it super hard for some reason. But who knows?
I hope not.
I hope not either.
That's not my Pokemon.
All right. Speaking with Nintendo, and this one, I know I saw your guys' reaction to this, and I had a similar one just in my living room when this got announced. Nintendo have announced remakes of Advance Wars 1 and 2 in a collection called Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp, coming to Switch on December 3rd. Garrett, I thought this series was dead. I thought this series, there was no way they were ever going to bring back Advance Wars ever. I thought that, Intelligent Systems move on to Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem's super popular, and now they can't do anything else. But no, they're doing an Advance Wars game in lieu of like a Fire Emblem remake, because we had suspected maybe that's what was coming this year. But no, we're getting Advance Wars instead. And I mean, even though I probably prefer like the kind of like pixely style of the games on the GBA, I mean, it still looks really, really, really cool. Another note about this game too, WayForward's actually handling most of the development for this one, which is awesome. I mean, WayForward's kind of on fire right now because they just announced a lot of really interesting stuff at E3 this year. They're mostly not RPGs, which is why we're not going to talk about them here. But so far, so good for Advance Wars. Garrett, I saw you guys kind of freak out on the Shack when this got announced. So obviously you're excited about this one, right?
I can't believe that they put this out. I can't believe the words that came out of your mouth, Ryan, that Advance Wars 1+2 is coming out later this year on Switch. I'm 100% down to get this game. I played a good chunk of it, probably like a few years ago on an emulator, but I haven't really gotten into it that much. But it's really cool to see that they are outsourcing this game to a different company. WayForward, a very dependable company, definitely. They make awesome games. I do enjoy the art style. I know some people are not totally like really into it that much versus the pixel art. I can totally understand that. But this is going to be Advance Wars, and I'm glad that they're putting it on the Switch, like a very wide general audience. And I want to see how people, buy it, fare with it. Please buy this game, because this is just going to only support more franchises to come out, more dead franchises to come out with Nintendo. With this statement and this saying, anything is possible with Nintendo. They could bring out Mother, they could bring out F-Zero, they can bring out any other franchise in Nintendo and come back from the graveyard because of this game.
I feel like we said that a lot during this year's Direct, Garrett, where it's just like all the franchises that I thought were dead at Nintendo or were on life support just kind of came out to play. You got that, you got Fatal Frame, you got Metroid, you got WarioWare. It was like the year of dreams for like obscure Nintendo franchises, or like dead, what we consider dead franchises. Like I thought WarioWare in the same boat was like a dead franchise too, or at least was like on life support. And so seeing some of those come back got me very excited. The only downside for Advance Wars, and I know it's going to be a sticking point for a lot of people, it is a full price game. So it is a tougher sell for some people, but at the same time, like just like you, Garrett, like I want as many people to buy this as possible so that we, have hope of a new Advance Wars game in the same way that, Metroid Dread, I want more people to buy that game. So, I mean, I'm hoping that we see some more Advance Wars games in the future.
Crossing my fingers.
Next one. This was an interesting trailer because this is probably one of the most hilarious and weird trailers from E3. The Outer Worlds 2 got announced at the Microsoft stage. This, of course, is coming to us from Obsidian, and I thought it was funny that they showed the trailer, but at the same time, I'm like, did they really need to announce this game this early? Because like, there's no date on this game. We don't know, like, there's no year attached to it or anything like that. We literally know nothing about it other than the C3 trailer, which they made fun of in the trailer itself as if it didn't really even mean anything. So it's kind of weird to me that they kind of came out and announced this one. But Garrett, what did you think about Outer Worlds 2's reveal?
I mean, I really enjoyed the first Outer Worlds, and I think the reason why they announced this so early is just to confirm everyone this franchise, because it's with Xbox now, more or less. It's not dead. It's not a dead franchise just right out of the gate, and I'm glad that they're exploring that world a little bit more. I think they can learn a lot more from the first Outer Worlds and their DLC. And make it a much bigger and a much grander game than ever before. Again, I'm being very patient for this one because they got Avowed coming out and they got Grounded. So they have a full play in their hands. They revealed all of their cards, Obsidian. And I'm glad that they have a really good lineup going on here, but there's no surprises with them whatsoever. But I'm glad that they're taking a second shot at the Outer Worlds franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really big hit. And I know a lot of people really liked it, like despite the Switch version, like barely running, the game itself was a fantastic game. So yeah, I'm excited they're sticking with it. And this one is a Series X and S and PC exclusive. So it's not coming to last gen. So I can imagine that, we're not going to have to deal with 1.5 minute load times this time. And they'll be able to kind of greatly expand kind of the worlds that you go to and stuff like that. So just like you, Garrett, I'm actually really excited to see what they do with this one. But again, it's hard to kind of imagine what they're going to do with it because we literally know nothing about it other than it's coming, and it's coming to exclusively to like current gen platforms, and that's it. That's kind of all we know about it.
That's it.
That's all we got to say. Next up, though, this one I know you were hyped about, Garrett, and when I saw the trailer about it, I was like, I'm in on this one too. NIS have announced Monarch, the new game from former Shin Megami Tensei developers that will launch in early 2022 on PS4, PS5, Switch, and PC. So pretty much everything but Xbox. Garrett, what did you think about this awesome reveal trailer for the game?
I'm glad that they revealed this trailer before E3 just to put it out there in the door. It's like, hey, we're making a cool game out there for you guys. I think they're blending so many elements that we are familiar with, like Persona with the school type of relationship, type of elements, along with, it looks like tactical RPG to me, like straight, like Fire Emblem in a sense. And I'm like, okay, you mix those two together with me and more of like a Code Vein, Dark Souls-ish type of goth vibe to it. And I'm totally down to try out this game. That's why I'm very excited for it. I would like to know when the release date is. I'm not sure what platform I'm going to be on. It depends on the performance on the Switch, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, I'm very excited to see how this game shakes out.
Yeah, same here. I mean, again, NIS has put out a lot of, interesting looking games this year. And it looks like this one is another one like thrown on top of there where I think this might be kind of their crown jewel going forward. Yeah. It looks awesome. It's coming out early 22. So I imagine that this is like out before March, if I'm not mistaken. Again, like they usually like to put out their release dates when it's like really close to when they're coming out. It's not too often NIS, but it's like dates like far out in the future for some of the releases. But yeah, the trailer itself looked really, really, really cool. And like you said, kind of the blend of like tactical RPGs with Persona elements and some Shin Megami Tensei thrown in there for good measure. Like it really impressed me. And I'm very excited for Monarch to come out next year. So yeah, I think that's definitely one to put on your radar because I know a lot of people have kind of like slept on it too because it kind of got buried after like the Summer Game Fest news because the trailer released that day, but it was like right after the conference kind of ended. So like people were talking about it, but then it kind of got drowned out by like Elden Ring and stuff like that. So I hope people don't sleep on that one because I think that game's going to be really cool. But we'll be talking about that next year because I suspect we might be doing some stuff with that one. All right, next up. And this one I did not expect to see at the Microsoft conference, but we saw it. Suikoden successor Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes has been dated for early 2023. In addition, Eiyuden Chronicles Arising is a brand new action RPG that will introduce the backstories of several of the full game's characters, and it will launch sometime in 2022. It will be day and date on Game Pass. So before I go to you on this one, Garrett, we're going to bring in Mike at Blaze Knight 0923, and he asked a question about this. How do you feel about Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes launching day and date into Game Pass after being kickstarted for multiple platforms? Garrett, what do you have to say to Mike on this question?
So I guess I haven't been really following the lead up to it, but my understanding is Eiyuden Chronicles was kickstarted initially.
Yeah.
Okay. It kind of actually sucks for specific few customers that like supported the game and probably getting the game and their preferred platform is Xbox or PC or whatever, but do have Game Pass. It's kind of like a double like dip right there. It's like, okay, that kind of sucks for you. But I think all the people who kind of support the Kickstarter kind of, I don't know how much they know is like, it's not reserved for you. You're supporting that platform to be developed, and whatever they do with that product later on, that's up. I think that's up to the developers. I mean, they kind of do that with Shenmue, where they kind of kickstarted that project, that major successful project, but then probably had some more support from Sony as well. They have these associations with these companies, and you just got to understand and keep in mind when you kickstart a game or support something on Kickstarter, you are supporting a product that's gonna that you want to come out and come into fruition. I understand that coming to Game Pass now might. I don't know, makes it feel less special, I guess, less unique in that sense. But at least, I'm not too bogged down by it. I'm not too let down that they're putting it out on Game Pass, even though they kickstarted.
And it's actually a very similar situation to Psychonauts 2, which Psychonauts 2, for those that didn't know, also was a Kickstarted game, also coming to Game Pass day and date after, Microsoft purchased Double Fine. It's like, well, of course it's going to at this point. So, it's an interesting scenario. It's the type of thing, too, where, like, even though it's coming to Game Pass day and date, it'll leave Game Pass at some point, I would assume.
Yes.
So like it's not like you're losing anything. Like you will have the game when it leaves Game Pass, so you'll be able to go back to it. So yeah,
that's a very good point.
I don't think it's really a big deal. I can understand people being a little upset about it, but it's the type of thing with Kickstarter too. And again, I don't know if you've ever supported games on Kickstarter, Garrett, but if you support a game on Kickstarter, a lot of times you'll be able to email the developers and say, because they'll usually have a customer service line and say, hey, can I switch my platform of choice to this platform instead? And then get the code there, kind of mid-development. And a lot of them usually will honor that. So I imagine they'll do something similar too, where if you were in a situation where you back this game, find out it's coming to Game Pass and you had wanted it on Xbox, you can get it now probably on Switch or PC or PS4 if you want to. So yeah, I think they're probably going to be pretty open to that. But getting back to kind of the announcement of this, 2023, really far away for this game, but they showed some gameplay in the trailer, Garrett, and it looks fantastic. It looks just like almost like the Suikoden 2 on the PlayStation 1 mixed with Octopath Traveler's kind of 2D HD visuals, which got me stoked for this game. But what did you think about this one?
Oh, I totally agree with you, Ryan. It's super down. I just saw the trailer and like, yep, I'm sold, and I'm so glad it's coming on Game Pass because I'm gonna be able to get it like day one and not have to worry about it. And it's good for me to try out, right? Very excited for this game.
Yeah, it was probably, out of all the games shown at the Microsoft press conference, it was probably the game that got me the most excited, which again is very silly because we saw stuff like Forza and Halo and stuff like that. But I don't know, man. I really like the Suikoden games back on PS1 and PS2, and I'm so glad that we're getting like something similar to those kind of coming out from a lot of people that made those games back in the day at Konami. So this announcement got me so excited. Plus, we're getting an extra game, like the Eiyuden Chronicle Rising,
out of nowhere,
coming out next year, which again just looks like a side-scrolling like action RPG, which I can't wait to play that too. And again, that'll be in Game Pass as well. So I'm super excited to try that one out. All right, we got two more announcements before we kind of move on here. Tiny Tina's Wonderland, a spin-off of the Borderlands series, is announced. It is coming sometime in 2022. It's basically like a fantasy version of Borderlands that takes place kind of in like this like almost like D&D-esque world of Borderlands that was kind of like a spun-off from like the Tiny Tina DLC from Borderlands 2. But this trailer, again, it didn't really show off any gameplay or anything like that. It just showed us some in-engine stuff, so we don't really know what it's going to play like or anything like that. How is your hype level on this one, Garrett? Is it there?
I'm always a day one person when it comes with Borderlands, the series, like Borderlands 2, Borderlands 3. I enjoyed the Tiny Tina's Dungeons and Dragons DLC. That's my favorite DLC, probably top 5 DLC ever. Like I really enjoyed that DLC more than the game. So I'm very, I'm cautiously optimistic about this game because they kind of let me down with Borderlands 3 with some of their options, their gameplay options, and their story was not good. But I'm very excited to be back with Tiny Tina because she is the freaking best. She has the best personality. She has so many complex relationships with other people in the Borderlands world. I'm very interested to see how this game shakes out, and I'll probably buy it day one.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the day one type of person because I mean we've talked about it on the show before. You know my thoughts on Borderlands as a series.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I'm gonna wait for reviews for this one, but I might pick it up early because I mean, again, just like you, like Tiny Tina's DLC for Borderlands 2 was probably my favorite part about that game. Seeing them kind of expand that concept into a full game actually gets me pretty excited. Like the ability to just run around a fantasy world with like machine guns sounds pretty fun. So if it turns out to be awesome, I'll be there. So there you go with that one. And last announcement, I had to throw this in here, Garrett. It kind of broke my heart, but we have to talk about this.
It's so bad.
Final Fantasy Pixel Remastered Collection was announced. It is coming soon, in quotations, to Steam and mobile. So, Garrett, when they were showing off the trailer for this, I was like, I was on stream on the Trophy Rooms live stream with Sean, Kyle, and Joseph, and like the other three were just kind of sitting there silently. But I was like so excited, like I was getting like audibly giddy like with this announcement because they were showing off basically all of the different art and the some gameplay of the original Final Fantasy games like Final Fantasy 1 through 6. I was like, yes, we're finally getting the collection I've been asking for since the beginning of the PlayStation 4 era. And it's coming to Steam and mobile, and you saw my heart sink on camera. It was like that time from The Simpsons where they're like, and you could see his heart just being ripped out of his chest right here. Like, this is the exact moment. It was like one of those for me, and it kind of broke me a little bit. How did you feel about this one, Garrett?
Dude, this was insulting. Like, when I saw the Steam and mobile like coming out at the screen of that trailer, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. They have to know that people want this on consoles. Of course they want these on consoles because they originally came out on Nintendo consoles and PlayStation consoles. Like, this is, I think it's a little ridiculous. I'm definitely not going to go for this game. Also, they already have some type of product out there for their some of the classic Final Fantasy games on Steam and mobile. They're just,
in fact, most of them are already there because this collection is actually the re-releases of the original games in their original form. Like, that's the hypest thing about this collection, isn't that they're doing like the weird artwork kind of do-over of Final Fantasy VI that they put on Steam. Oh no, it's the original versions of these games which is what you would want from this collection. But like, even they're doing translated versions of Final Fantasy 2 and 3, which never came out here, that are basically re-released in their original NES forms, but only on Steam and mobile. And it's just like, as a longtime Final Fantasy fan, it kills me. Like, this is basically a license to print money, and they just don't want to print the money for some reason. Like,
they want to hold it for now. I really think it's like, we know we can put these out on Switch and PlayStation, and it'll sell like bonkers. We need to wait till we're kind of struggling again, or there's a long drought of Square Enix games. Then we'll probably hit this like Final Fantasy collection out. And honestly, if they do Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3 in a pack, then 4, 5, 6 in a pack, $60, people will go crazy. They would sell like hotcakes.
I would be there day one to buy that.
Yes.
At that price.
Yes. And like, put them together, put in like a stupid, collector's edition for $200. People will buy that. Like, it's, I know they know, and they're holding their cards. And I know they just want to put it out there on Steam and mobile for now, just to gauge what people think of it before they actually do that.
Yeah. And I will say that this is an exciting announcement if you do play just on PC, because again, they've had versions of these games on PC forever, but this is like going to be the best way to play those games. Absolutely. So if you don't want to play them in an emulator, you can go buy them on Steam and play them that way. So I definitely think it'll be worth it for that. So it is an exciting announcement that it's happening. It's just, it's not, it's like the monkey's paw, where it's like, it's not like this. It's not like this.
Not like this.
All right, Garrett, it's time to go over our predictions, because Garrett, we made predictions on our show a couple weeks ago, and that I wanted to touch on here. So Garrett, we'll run through yours first here.
Okay.
Capcom will announce Dragon's Dogma 2 and will be a PlayStation timed exclusive. I think this might be, true. We talked about it on the show a little bit, but it sounds like they're going to, if it's coming out this year or being announced this year, to be at the PlayStation show in July or something like that. So you might have missed the window a little bit with this one, but we'll see.
Right.
Next up, Fire Emblem Remake is announced. Genealogy of the Holy War will be the remade game. We both thought that was a slam dunk, and it did not happen.
Did not happen.
But again, we got Advance Wars instead. So I will gladly take that trade off.
Advance Wars replaced Fire Emblem. Yep.
I'll take that trade off any day of the week. Next up, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle 2 announced spring 2022. Other than the spring 2022 part, you got it completely right. And again, you had just thrown that out there as a date, so I mean, I'm not going to count that against you. So you got yourself 1 point so far, Garrett. Next up, Tales of Arise will be announced as a day-and-date Xbox Game Pass day one game, and that did not happen. They did not announce anything about Tales of Arise pretty much at all at this show, other than at Summer Game Fest, they showed off a new trailer with the last two playable characters that are part of your squad, which I thought was cool. So it got a really cool trailer, but unfortunately not coming to Game Pass day one. And last but not least, and this one was kind of a little bit tough to grade you on, Garrett, but I will argue you get no points for this. Starfield will take up the majority of the Bethesda time during the Xbox Games Showcase, and the way you had worded it was, it will basically be Starfield and updates on Elder Scrolls Online and Fallout 76, which we did get, but no other game from Bethesda, which is wrong because we got Redfall at the end as well. So you got close. You got close. You got a little too greedy on that one, Garrett. You could have said they could have talked about one other game, but they did talk about the other stuff you said they'd talk about. So there you go. All right. So you got 1 point, Garrett. As for me, let's see how well I did. Shin Megami Tensei will come out on November 12th. You better believe
you get
Ryan
100 points for this one.
I can't believe that I actually nailed that down. I always love to be brave and kind of like do a crazy prediction where I'd like try and Nostradamus like a release date just out of thin air. I just can't believe I was actually right for once. So there you go. Shin Megami Tensei will come out on November 12th. That's 1 point for me. Square Enix will announce another remake like Trials of Mana. Chrono Cross will be the game being remade. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Persona 5 Royal and Persona 4 Golden will be coming to Xbox and Nintendo Switch. That did not happen, and that made me very sad. I was so sure, Garrett. I was so sure when we talked about this that some kind of Persona game was being announced during E3 this year for the anniversary of Persona, and they didn't announce anything, which made me a little bit sad. All right, next up, Square Enix will announce 2 of the following PS1 ports for Switch. Final Fantasy Tactics, Xenogears, and Parasite Eve. Obviously, that didn't happen. Instead, they wanted to put the Final Fantasy games on Steam. But last thing, Dragon Age 4 gets dated. No Dragon Age 4. And that was, again, my like very like shoot for the moon kind of prediction where it's like, yeah, this probably isn't happening, but I wanted to make Sean Capri's day by saying that. So there you go. We each got 1 point, Garrett. So we tied. There was no losers in the thing. We're
all winners. Yay.
You're a winner.
I think you get more accuracy. Like getting the release date of Shin Megami Tensei, that's pretty good.
I mean, I just used the theory that it's a week before Pokemon and it's the week after Battlefield. So I just figured it would be the right time for that game to come out.
Very logical.
Turned out that the people at Atlas also agreed with me. So there you go. Mm-hmm. All right, let's party up and get some questions from the audience here. We're going to start with JMac Productions at JMac Production 1. He asks, just started following the show on iTunes. Dude, thank you so much for the support. My question would be, will Nintendo ever open the floodgates post E3 and re-release or remake more classic SNES RPGs on Switch, like Seeker of Evermore, Chrono Trigger, Shadowrun, etc.? So first of all, JMac, this would actually be outside of Nintendo's control because this would be basically up to Square Enix or all the other companies that actually put these together. I think Shadowrun was a different company. I'm blanking on the name of who made that game. But yeah, I think that this would be outside of Nintendo's control. Would Nintendo kind of jump into bed on something like this? Maybe, but we didn't really have too many kind of RPGs from Nintendo back in the day. Besides, we had Super Mario RPG, which again would have to be a collaboration with Square if they wanted to remake that. Or we had Earthbound, which I guess they could do a remake for, but I don't see why they would. And then Fire Emblem, which again we talked about earlier, where I think there will be another Fire Emblem, Super Famicom remake at some point. So, Garrett, I'm gonna go to you. What do you think about this question from JMac?
Yeah, I just don't think you'll get too much support from Nintendo pushing these companies just because you don't see these RPGs on Nintendo Switch Online at all. Like we rarely get any games of use in that online service. So I don't think they're leaning on companies to do that. I think Square Enix is the most hopeful company to do that, to actually remake some of their older games like Chrono Trigger, like their Final Fantasy games, like any of their franchise. I think we just need to pay attention to Square Enix a little bit more on that. Other than that, though, man, like I can't think of other Japanese-focused companies that would really like to remake their older games and coming out on Switch or other systems on other platforms. What do you think?
Yeah, same here. Where like when you look at how many games are being remade nowadays that are RPGs, it's pretty much us all Square Enix when you kind of look at that list. We don't really see too much outside that, whereas Square Enix has been really good about that. We got Trials of Mana last year. We got Final Fantasy VII Remake. We got the sequel to that coming soon. So, I mean, there is some precedent for them doing that, and I think they will do just kind of what, like my prediction kind of threw out there. I think they will do like another remake in the next year or two, whether that's Chrono Trigger or Chrono Cross or something else. Like, I think they will do another remake soon. But yeah, like just like other companies, like Sega's not going out there remaking like the Shining Force games, for example. Right. Or like Nintendo is probably not going to go out there and remake Golden Sun. as much as that, as cool as that would be.
With Advance Force, anything is possible.
That's true. I mean, I shouldn't call Golden Sun dead at this point because again, Advance Force showed anything could come back. So, yeah, I mean, I that's where my head's at on this one. I don't think they're going to. You're not going to see many companies besides Square kind of doing this kind of thing. You'll see re-releases of some of these games, but like you're not going to probably see full-on remakes of some of this stuff, which is just too bad. All right, next up, the Winter Gamer asks, what are some of your favorite quality of life mechanics in RPGs that you appreciate but you don't use? For example, to autofill your skill tree. Garrett, are there any like quality of life mechanics in RPGs that you are like, man, I'm glad that's here, but I'll never use that?
That's a great question. There are two big ones that are in RPGs that I don't really use at all. One is Persona loves to do auto battle a lot with your other characters. I like to pick individually one by one with each person. I know that gets slow and tedious, but unless I'm grinding, unless it's like a super easy monster that I could fast forward through, I don't ever use that. So that's one mechanic. The other mechanic is optimizing gear and optimizing like the press button optimize for skills and gear and stuff like that. I rarely use that. I only ever use it if I have no idea what I'm doing within equipment or skills based type of thing. But more or less, I know what I want in my characters and what I like, more defense or more attack or whatever. So I don't normally use that. What about you, Ryan? Is there any other mechanics you could think of that you don't use?
Winter Gamer's one, the one he actually used as the example was like the one that came to mind when reading this question, even before I saw it as example, like autofilling your skill points. I never like to do that. In fact, the only game that I do that in is Mass Effect, and I don't do it for my main character. I do it for my squad mates because I don't want to have to. I don't like throwing out all the individual skill points, especially for Mass Effect 1 for my squad mates because it's kind of tedious. So for that game, I like to optimize that. But for every other game, I never like to turn that feature on. If I'm playing like a retro re-release of an RPG, like the Square Enix ones, like playing Final Fantasy VII again, I don't ever like to use like the cheat functions or like the fast forward or rewind functions. But I am glad, I appreciate that they're there because they're there mostly for newer players. But for me, it kind of ruins the original experience. So maybe that's what I like to throw in there. Whereas other stuff like you talked about, like optimizing gear and stuff like that, I like that stuff because it cuts down on clicks in the menu. And then what I'll do is I'll use that as the baseline and then kind of go through and kind of tweak it from there as I see fit. But I'll usually do that. So that's for me is like fast forward, rewind, stuff like that. I think are kind of my quality of life mechanics that I appreciate, but I'll never use. Next up, Ask What Not Why asks, how would you like to see the RPG genre evolve? And this one is just kind of like is an interesting question because again, we did our whole episode last week, which was, what defines an RPG, Garrett. And honestly, I think we've seen a ton of evolution with the RPG genre. But again, I think the evolution that's happened is, it entering like more subgenres and more like subcategories. Like that's kind of how it's evolved. And if I want to be honest, I love kind of the core tenets of the RPG genre. So I don't think those need to change too much, but I'd like to see it evolve to like maybe include, more genres of games. Like, how awesome would it be to have like a snowboarding RPG, for example, or like, like more like puzzle RPGs. I think that would be really interesting. So I think maybe that's kind of how I would like to see it evolve is maybe go in a direction that brings us to more subgenres or more subcategories that we haven't seen before. Like what would a battle royale RPG look like, Garrett? Like how weird would that be? Like an action RPG format, a Fortnite, where you like level up your character like in one round, and then
that would be a little
the most
weird.
Powerful characters kind of meet in the middle kind of thing. I think that would be interesting. Yeah. What do you think about this question though?
It's a very good question. I'm trying to think of games like RPGs. Is like, okay, what else do I think would be a little bit better and more encompassing, more open to the general audience? And I think on the same lines with you is like get some more subgenres, but let indies like kind of like have a spotlight to that, right? Let indies like kind of get their own creative thoughts and creative ideas into it, and we kind of do see that. And I would like to see RPGs to be a little bit more and tighter, a little bit more focused. I feel like a lot of these, especially JRPGs, where it's just so long, so a lot of fluff going on, and a lot of games are great, like Persona. But there, a lot of the time, it's just like, okay, I'm gonna grind and just go on forth. Okay, I'm playing like 80 hours of grinding. It's like, this is a little bit too much. Be like Chrono Trigger. Be a little bit more focused. Have a little bit, be a tighter experience. And I'm willing to pay full price for a 20-hour or 15-hour very great RPG versus an 80 to 100-hour okay RPG. So that's what I would like to see more. It's just put more focus on quality more than quantity in some cases. Yeah.
I know like some developers want to make their game as long as possible. And it comes to like, arguments we've had about games like that are not RPGs, like Alien Isolation, for example, where like it's a horror game that's very padded out and it should have been a 5-hour game or like a 7-hour game, but it ends up being like a 30-hour game just because they added a whole bunch of weird stuff to the game. So yeah, I can understand that point of view as well. And again, like there are some modern RPGs that have kind of adopted that sensibility, like Cosmic Star Heroine is the one that comes to mind for me, because that one's like, you can beat it in 10 hours and get the platinum trophy.
That's great.
So like that's the perfect time frame for a game. Or like Undertale, where like you can beat that game very quickly as well. So those are ones that come to mind to me. So there are some RPGs that are doing that, but again, like we should see more of that type of thing, rather than going towards Persona 5 Royal, which is like 120 hours or something like that.
Oof.
Yeah. Next up, Sean Capri asks, does currency ever matter in RPGs? Like, seriously, it's so superfluous most of the time. So I think this comes down to just it's a game by game basis, Sean. Because I definitely know there are some games where like the currency really, really matters, especially older JRPGs where like you're like tight for cash for most of the game. And it's really not until like right before you go to the final battle where you kind of grind it for a bit where like money becomes like a superfluous thing, versus a game like Mass Effect. If you play like Mass Effect 2, for example, you start that game, if you import your Mass Effect 1 save, with like $1 billion in that game. And you're just like, it's insane. Money is no object. I will go and buy everything. So I think it's just on a game by game basis, but I do know that most modern RPGs kind of like there's a currency system in there, but it's not there as like a hindrance for you, I think. So what do you think about this question, Garrett?
It's a great question, and I understand your opinion, Sean. I just think, along with you, it is a game by game basis, but also like it's kind of tricky to put currency in there, because you got to understand everything about the game and the player's skill level, right? Because what you're doing with money is you're buying equipment, potions, items, stuff like that. So in money, we're going to have to consider all of that. We're going to have to consider how much grinding you're going to have to do in battles in order to get that money. Like what kind of difficulty level are you thinking of? Are you going to think of an easier mode or a harder mode? And you're going to get more cash, less cash whatsoever. I think a lot of the games that I'm playing right now actually do an okay job at the cash flow, at least for me. Like Nier Automata does a pretty good job. It doesn't give you too much, but it doesn't give you too little as well. It always feels like I'm reaching for the next weapon or reaching for the next upgrade in the next potion. And I think another big example, not an RPG, but what I'm playing right now, Ratchet and Clank, I think does a pretty good job of flowing through and buying the weapons based off how many bolts you have and how much gameplay you have. So I think, it all boils down to is balance. If your game doesn't have balance with cash, then I agree with Sean. It's kind of stupid. Like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it's pretty dumb with all the stupid currencies you have in there. But it's a game by game basis for sure.
No, but they don't want like the currency to like ever screw you over in a game too, where if you like run out of money, but you don't have enough to go buy healing items or something like that, like you basically just have to start over again. Like, they don't want to balance it that way, like too far in the other direction where it screws you over. So I think that's part of it too, where it's like it's a really tight balance, and not every game is good at that, or at least making it feel impactful. So I think that's more where that comes from. And again, modern games too I feel like they're just more forgiving when it comes to currency in games.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Last question comes to us from Mr. Nasty Boots, and he asks, name 3 RPGs we are not fighting for the greater good. And to give you time to think about this one, Garrett, I actually came up with 3 examples before we started recording today. First one that came to mind when I read this question was actually Tales of Berseria, where you're essentially you're not fighting for the greater good in that game. You're playing as Velvet after her brother has basically been murdered by like your father figure, and then it's basically a revenge story. So she's basically trying to basically hunt down and basically murder the guy who ruined her life, essentially, because she got blamed for the murder and then thrown in prison, essentially. So I thought that was kind of the first one that kind of came to mind, because you're almost like playing as like almost like the villains from from Tales of Zestiria, but in the ancient past. So that's where that one comes in. Next one is Undertale. Because in Undertale, the whole point of that game is for you basically to try and escape from this like monster world. You're not there to try and save the world or anything like that. You can be nice to the people there and kind of do good deeds if you want to, but you can also be like totally evil if you want to too and just murder everyone. But I mean, the whole point of the game is not to save the world from like the monster world or anything like that. It's to basically escape from this like underground, monster world and get back to the human world. And then the last game that I thought of as well, Pokemon. You're just basically trying to be like a Pokemon master and then win a tournament. And that's against like the Elite Four. That's the whole point of the game. So, I mean, you're not you're not trying to save the world. In some of the later Pokemon games, they obviously try and have you stop like a plot from either Team Rocket or whatever team they decide to throw in said game. But if you look back at like Pokemon Blue or Red, you're not trying to save the world in that game.
No,
you're very much trying to be like, collect all the Pokemon and be like the Pokemon champion. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to do in that game. So those are the three I came up with. Garrett, do you have any other examples of this besides the three I listed off?
Oh, definitely. I got a couple. One is, and I think you could just say for like most of the Fallout games, but really Fallout 3 is like the first game that I was like, okay, you could be really good or you could be really bad in this world. Like you don't have to be fighting for the greater good at all. I mean, it's all about, associating with factions and stuff like that. Really, New Vegas as well is a big one. Is a lot of player agency with that game, where you can totally just like blow up certain things, be evil, or you could be just like a good angel. So yeah, Fallout is one of the seminal games that has player agency with that. Another game that it's just I was just thinking of that is just about surviving is Darkest Dungeon.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so Darkest Dungeon, I've played a handful of hours. It's a very brutal dungeon, turn-based dungeon crawler, and it's all about you trying to survive in this dark world, and your players get a lot of buffs like stress, lack of sleep, confuse, and you're going to have to go back to the main hub and fix them up and make sure that they're good to go on the next hunt. So that's another one. And the last one, not technically I wouldn't say it's technically an RPG, but it has a lot of RPG elements, and that's Infamous. Okay. I like how there's a lot of player agency with that as well. And there's two very defining paths with that, where you could be such a jerk, or you could be a goody two shoes.
But the canonical ending for Infamous 2, Garrett, is you serving the greater good. What do you have to say about that?
Well, you just go to Infamous Second Son then, where you could be just
there. Man,
I don't like playing the evil route in Infamous Second Son. You're just such a jerk.
Yeah.
In that one, and you just graffiti everything, and you're rude to your family members or as well in your community. And it's like, I don't care for this, but it's there if you're not fighting for the greater good if you want to do that.
That's true.
So yeah.
Cool. All right, before we go, Garrett, before we go to plugs, I have one last question I would ask you, because we got a little bit of time to ask this. Now
Sounds
that
good.
E3 is over and that we've got all the games that are coming out this year, we kind of have a good idea as to what's coming out this year. Did your game that you're looking forward to most this year change at all after E3 this year? So I'm going to say, what's your most anticipated game for the rest of the year? But also, if that game is not an RPG, what is your most anticipated RPG for the rest of the year?
I think still my most anticipated game for this year has got to be Pokemon, Diamond and Pearl, just because I have such a nostalgia for that game, and I know I'm going to love it from day one. So yeah, I don't think that has changed, but I am more excited than ever for Shin Megami Tensei 5 and also Monster Hunter Stories 2. Those are probably the top three seminal games that of this year that I'm most looking forward to. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. As for me, mine's changed since the last time we talked, because obviously we've got a new 2D Metroid game this year, Garrett.
Yes,
and,
that's true.
Metroid's my favorite game series of all time, especially the 2D games. Like I have such a soft spot for those. I mean, it's the main reason why I'm doing this now is because of Super Metroid in particular. So getting a new one this year, I'm so psyched for Metroid Dread. Like that's easily my most anticipated game of the year. Followed up, but for RPGs, I mean, that really hasn't changed either. I mean, Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker is still my most anticipated RPG for the rest of the year, especially because it's basically like concluding like a 10-year long saga of these this base game and then 4 expansions with these really unique stories. So I'm really excited to see kind of how that ends. And then stuff we kind of learned here. I mean, Diablo 2 Resurrected is up there in my top 5, as well as Shin Megami Tensei 5 is up there as well. And then Advance Wars. I got to give it to Advance Wars for coming back. So even though I've played those games before, I'm so excited to play those games again on Switch. So those are kind of the games I'm looking for to as well. But before we go, Garrett, plugs go.
You can follow me on Twitter at Bland Explosion, and follow me on Twitch whenever I stream, twitch.tv/Bland Explosion. I'm also on Nintendo Shack and Game Tag over the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You also find all of our podcasts and all of our awesome stuff over at patreon.com/YouMeCapri. Also, one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, even though our schedule is kind of weird, there might be something dropping on the podcast feed on Friday. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So come back on Friday. There might be something there for you there. So definitely come back for that. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been level 5 of the RPG Cave, and we out.
Bye-bye.